This KFAN podcast is sponsored by Builders and Remodelers, exclusive Twin Cities provider of Elements Windows. Get the highest quality windows at unmatchable value. Visit buildersandremodelers.com for more details. And
some people call me the space cowboy. Yeah. Some call me the gangster of love. Some people call me Morice, 'cause I speak of the pompatus of love.
Well, how about this? Not only do we get the big knocker on the radio today, we get him in studio today. Very serendipitous. Welcome back.
Oh, it's great to be back.
So you had business in town.
I did.
And then it just worked out from a schedule standpoint that Guardsy had reached out to gab you on, and you said, hey, I'm actually going to be reasonably close. I'll stop by.
That's right. It was close enough that I was debating, do I walk over with my suit jacket on, or I was here getting an auto work done if it wasn't done in time. That was a debate in my mind. Do I show up all sweaty, or do I just kind of dial in? But it all worked out.
Good to have you, man. Good to see you. I didn't shake your hand because I don't know if I'm still contagious. You would know all this stuff. So I'm on day 3 of a Z-Pack, I think, day 3. And now I'm on these heavy mega for 6 days dosages of steroids. Is that dangerous? Or am I going to be okay?
I think you'll live. Oh. But at least from my own physical, visual assessment, I think you're going to make it.
Yeah, the voice. It's supposed to help the voice a little bit. Is that true?
Yes.
Roids, the prednisone? Yeah,
because it's, actually your vocal cords are very sensitive to any kind of fluid. That's why it's when you get a cold, it's just almost like a musical instrument, like a reed instrument. And so anything that interferes with the vibration really throws it off. So the steroids take that swelling and inflammation down. So,
well, I haven't had any rages or anything, but prednisone would not be when they talk about steroids and the steroids that athletes used back in the day. Prednisone wouldn't be at the top of that list, or would it? Maybe I don't know enough about different steroids.
Well, no, it's different. I mean, it's a corticosteroid, right,
okay,
that you're taking, which is more for inflammation,
okay,
right, as opposed to an anabolic steroid.
That's right, anabolic.
Growth.
There you go.
That being said, actually, getting steroid-induced, corticosteroid-induced kind of psychosis and rage is a real thing. In fact, I think, during COVID, my dad was sick. He was in the hospital, and he's susceptible to that, and so it was a real problem because he has COPD, so they put him on high dose steroids, and it's a real thing. It's something to watch out for, and it's unpredictable. But if you've had it before, there's a good chance you'll have it again. So,
for me, when I get upper respiratory, it seems like it's more and more. It affects my voice more quickly. And then obviously you're talking straight through for this many hours. It's just then it starts straining the whole bit.
Yeah,
it all works together.
I don't know. For me, last time luckily I haven't been sick.
Good for you.
Last time my voice was strained probably was going to the Wild playoff game, the one game that they actually won. I was actually
you were at that game.
Having to attend that one. Yeah.
Are you worried about Kaprizov signing?
Yeah. How can you not be? Right. I mean, I think he will. I'm not going to.
He's allegedly in Russia right now.
Yes.
Allegedly, his agent isn't.
And allegedly, he convinced. My gosh, I can't believe I'm blanking on his name. The guy we traded from Tarasenko.
Tarasenko, yes.
Because Tarasenko had a no trade clause, and apparently he lobbied him to, so that makes you think he's invested in the team. But, he's clearly an all-star caliber talent, and so few of those now with the way free agency is, both in the NBA and the NHL, actually hit free agency, that you would think it would be a feeding frenzy if he did. So it's a cause for concern. I'm not worried yet.
By the way, if you have questions, and a number of them have already come in for the knocker, Bradshaw and Brian KFAN text line, as always, is available to you at 646-86. That's 646-86. I'll try to get to some of those texts that came in much earlier as well. How have you been? We haven't talked to you in a while. How are things going? It's busy, it sounds like.
Very busy. It's funny we just had the 5-year anniversary of COVID, right? At least
hard to believe.
COVID, yeah, hard to believe. And it's kind of like I've just been part of how my life has changed with that was somewhat kind of anticipatable, but not predictable, right? It just so I've been just really busy with a lot of travel. I'm really passionate now about kind of using the Mayo Clinic to help bring innovations. I think that's one thing we saw with COVID, that we have to continue to innovate, in healthcare and in diagnostics to help people. So that's been my passion, but it means a lot of time in the air and a lot of meetings and talking with people. And it's a little different. And when I was on with you during COVID, my job was very much a hybrid between being the chair of the department and responsible for our outreach to the community. Now I'm just responsible for growing that outreach. So it's I think less and less about the day-to-day doctor stuff than I do kind of just how are you going to incent people? How are you going to, incent companies to grow and all those sorts of things.
What's interesting to me about that is, by definition, that has to mean you're talking, in many cases, to different people than you used to, right? And that means CEOs. That means a lot more on the business side. And I'm wondering how you have found that challenge, because I'm not saying, look, I'm sure you're a good communicator, but I assume it is different speaking with fewer doctors in some cases and more business people and owners and CEOs, et cetera. Talk to me a little bit about, trying to reach them, speaking that language when, more than anything else, you have, your background was a medical background.
Yeah, well, it is a lot different, right? And I've been very fortunate that I've been surrounded by a lot of really smart people throughout my career. I have to say, first of all, I feel a bit like Forrest Gump when I'm driving over here. I'm like, how many different kind of life experiences have I had? Because I just was at a conference with a bunch of CEOs and investment people, Wall Street type people. There's a lot to learn. You have to understand kind of what motivates them, what they view as success, how they view you as a doctor, what they expect of you. But, I think ultimately it boils down to something you and I have talked about a lot, and that is you can't go in there with hubris, right?
Yes.
You can't go in there like trying to bluster with overconfidence because I don't know about, returns on multiples and, at net present value and all that kind of stuff. Verbatim, I know a little bit enough to be dangerous maybe, but how do you express kind of, I don't want to say uncertainty, but there's a way to express uncertainty that doesn't undermine confidence.
Right.
There's a way to invite those people to tell me what they're thinking, and let them know that I'm invested in helping them solve their problem or grow their asset or whatever in a way that doesn't make it seem like I don't understand it, right? So that's it. So I've been leveraging a lot still those communication skills, but it is a little. I was on a panel with two other CEOs, right? Oh. And I'm like, I'm just like, how the heck did I end up here? And it was on longevity, which is another very interesting topic, and it's not really in my, it's not my day-to-day thinking about how we use the labs to promote longevity. I like the challenge. I think it's fun. So far, it seems to be going well. No one's kicked me out. They invited me back.
They've not yet. Yeah, it's not like they say, get out of here. We see right through you. That hasn't happened yet?
That has not happened yet. I've still managed to fool them.
That's the greatest fear we all have, right? Is that one day somebody says, come on, you're a fraud, right? We all have it deep down, that insecurity,
absolutely.
do we not?
Absolutely.
And you're saying you always have, well, I say always, but in recent years traveled a lot, but it sounds like the travel's been ratcheted up even more in this position.
It has. I think part of it's the position itself. So, when you're out there trying to help spread a message and find people that are affiliated, you have to get and be there, right? Again, if I'm going to understand these other people that I'm interacting with, I can't do it from a distance. So I have to be there and really meet them and get to know them. So that's part of it. Part of it is business as well. I think that during COVID, didn't think about this, but during COVID, those, people didn't travel. So now it's like, people have to get together. There's just a very strong desire to be in place. And again, it's probably just like when you think about like owners meetings and things like that, a lot of the real business happens in the side. People always talk about Indianapolis and the NFL Combine. That's where all the agents and GMs and stuff, where all the deals are happening at the steakhouse there. There's an element of that to business too. You have to be there. And so it's been a lot of travel for sure, racking up the frequent flyer miles.
As I mentioned, a lot of good questions are coming in via the text line 64686. Mayo Clinic Big Knocker Bill Morice is indeed kind enough to join us. And so, I'm sure there's some people listening to this going, wait a minute now. Mayo Clinic does not have an exposure problem. Everybody knows about Mayo Clinic. So what more can be done in that regard? How do you answer that question? Because we all assume that worldwide, not just nationally, there is no bigger quote-unquote brand when it comes to medicine than Mayo Clinic.
Yeah, on the one hand, that's definitely true, right? Mayo Clinic has a well-earned sterling reputation. There's very few places. I think when you look on like just name recognition globally, it's high on the list. With that also, though, comes some kind of preconceived notions about any entity. If you have a name that's recognized, a franchise, an individual, in this case, Mayo Clinic, it conjures up a very defined image, right? And what we're trying to do, and what I've been asked to lead, is actually stepping out of that image. So the image is we're in Minnesota, or now Florida and Arizona in the upper Midwest. We've been focused on patients that can come to us and trying to help the serious and complex. Well, now my job is to say, hey, that's true about Mayo Clinic, but that we're actually, from a business perspective, pretty close, right? Like a lot of healthcare systems. My job is to actually change that, to say, you know what, I've been asked to help grow our diagnostic footprint, and we can't do that alone. So that means we're kind of open for business, if for lack of a better term, in terms of really being creative about like talking to an investor or another CEO saying, I think what you have can help patients, or I think you should invest in this because it can help patients, and I can help you grow that business, right? And Mayo Clinic is interested in doing that, and that's not something we've done before. So that's why it's important to get out there, because even like when I get in those circles, they just don't think of Mayo Clinic in that way. They would never pick up the phone and say, hey, I have this great idea. Do you guys want to work on it with us, right?
Cash call, Guards? I thought you were on the phone for a second. Might as well, let's try to stay on schedule. Mayo Clinic, Big Knocker. What's your schedule, by the way? How long can you stay? You're pretty wide open.
I was able to get my car. So I was wondering if I was going to have to hitchhike to get my car. So I don't have to do that. So I'm pretty open.
How about some cash, Guardsy?
Fan and BigDeck.com. I want to give you a shot to win bonus bucks with our national cash contest. Final keyword of the night is green. Go to KFAN.com and enter the keyword green.
We will run through a bunch of questions coming in for the knocker and get to some other medical subjects as well. Maybe some sports stuff, too, when we come back.
The Fan. Celebrate the return of football with the Minnesota Vikings at training camp. The fun kicks off Saturday, July 26th. Back together Saturday. You can score tickets today at Vikings.com/camp.
Man, we got a bunch of really provocative questions. Maybe a couple of them will put you on the spot. I don't know, but you've never shrunk from that. You've been in the public eye long enough now where you can handle all of it, can't you?
I can. Hopefully. Yeah. We'll find out.
Let's find out. That's very true. Here's your toss-up. This is from Paul in Eastern North Carolina. Eastern North Carolina.
Got it.
Well, you asked the knocker his thoughts on the AI influence on medicine in the near future. Elon Musk spoke recently on the exponential growth of medical treatments in medicine in the next 12 to 24 months. You and I have talked about some AI stuff before, but I assume it's ever evolving and ever changing, and it's a very broad question, but where would you like to begin today?
Well, I mean, it's a great question, and it is a broad question because there's many different facets to it. First of all, I would just say that AI really does hold the key to unlock a lot of the problems that we have in healthcare, just in terms of the ability to either make things more efficient, to present information to providers, doctors, patients in a way that's understandable and synthesizes a lot of complex information that takes hours right now for an individual to wade through. I think there's debate, honestly, in terms of where it will first really make impact. I think a lot of people think, well, we'll use AI to run hospitals more efficiently, and therefore patients will get through more quickly. Yet there's a whole science of, and you can read articles about, with agentic chatbots and things like that they can interact with individuals in an empathetic way. And will that actually replace, would you actually have I saw one thing like a coach for one of these big AI, maybe it was Google, some big company like that, saying that, well, AI is going to put me out of business. There won't be any more professional coaches because it will be better. So I think people are more skeptical on that. That's sort of the pie in the sky. I think it probably will be more, will veer more towards the operations. But then again, I don't know. The other thing that's really dramatic is it's going to really accelerate how we get new drugs. Because now it's interesting. When I was in California, I was meeting with the individual I got my PhD under, a guy named Dr. Bob Abraham, who ended up being really big in drug discovery. And he was talking about the fact, like when I worked in his lab, you would put a person like me and say, hey, go figure out if this drug works doing X, Y, or Z. Now you can just basically create a model, and you can go through 150,000 drugs in a week, right? And then come up with the 25 most likely. So its impacts will be
there's nothing that doesn't sound evil at all. I know there's aspects of AI that people think are evil or dangerous or concerning. That example to me is one, there's nothing but efficiency related to that, correct?
That's right. I think that's true. I think that's, and the same with like hospital operations. I think that's also true. Where do you have concerns? Where do I have concerns personally around AI? It's still, a lot of it is three things. Number one, the quality of the answer it gives you is dependent very much on the way you ask the question. So if you think about what makes a really good doctor, a lot of times you think, that doctor asked me that one thing I wouldn't even think of as important, right?
Yep,
and that
absolutely.
that unlocked the key, the whole mystery why I don't feel well. So that's not going to solve that problem, by and large. Number two is that the AI engines are advancing super rapidly, and yet they all pull from the same data, and that data has holes. Sometimes it will just try and fill in the gap, and we don't know that. So you have to really understand what kind of data is being pulled, because it's been called hallucination is one of the things. But certainly, you wouldn't, especially if you put more and more trust into these things, you wouldn't want it pulling something about,
right.
You probably have this, you probably have Rocky Mountain spotted fever. You wouldn't know any better, right? And then last but not least is back to bias. So, and I did put a few of these. I've been more on LinkedIn these days than X, but I still am on both. Two things really stand out. Number one is, going back to that data. Again, a lot of the data that these engines have to use is coming out of, advanced countries with advanced healthcare. And that means even populations within those countries, those algorithms might underperform. I think there was a study about, the use of AI to look at mammograms for breast cancer, and it missed cases in African American women, black women, because it didn't have enough data to see them. The other is really just the acceleration of the haves and the have-nots, right? Because on the one hand, you can say, boy, AI should open the world, increase access to healthcare. You look at the computing power. I mean, that's a lot of the trade wars is about, between who controls the processors, right? The NVIDIA chips, and it's the U.S. and it's China. And so will it actually increase disparities, right? These things. So I think I don't worry so much about the taking over the world stuff, but it's those things. And that, again, gets back kind of into the economics of what's driving it, which is kind of an interesting thing I hadn't thought about for many years as a physician.
In the past, I think we've talked about the challenges when it relates to rural medicine, places where there are fewer and fewer doctors or hospitals, et cetera. Does AI factor in a positive way in that regard? Yes,
I think it does in really two ways. Number one, it certainly can help as you look at wearables. I'm a big Garmin watch guy. Things as we age, falling detection, motion detection, that can really help signal, to someone that's not immediately near healthcare, that they need to go in and be seen. And so it can certainly help with that and make that knowledge more accessible. And then also, if you're in a healthcare setting where it's maybe just a general practitioner, again, it can up the knowledge, right? So, and those things are meaningful. So I think we mentioned, we've had some issues with Gretzky. I was going to shame Gretzky on air here. He bit me. I was actually in Arizona. Yeah. I thought he had a cactus needle in his paw, and he freaked out when I went to look at it and bit my thumb. And
not good.
Yeah, it was not good. It was a real struggle in our relationship for a long time. And now he's neutered, so I think the struggle is primarily on his side.
Wow.
Yeah, it was extreme.
Well, you had to do what you got to do, I guess. Yeah.
But to your question, you know what? It happened at night, and the next night, my wife and I were out at dinner. I'm like, my thumb hurts more than I expected it to. Dog bites can be tricky, right? Maybe I should just go in. Okay, and then she was like, and she's a nurse and she's very cautious. She's like, well, you maybe should sleep on it, Well, the only reason I went in was because we were literally right by the Mayo ER, right? The Mayo Clinic, Arizona ER. I went in, and long story short, I already had infection that had spread up into my armpit.
Wow.
And so, I was trying to call, my wife was already asleep. I'm like, I might actually be in the hospital. It turns out I got IV antibiotics and got out. But again, that's an area where AI, you could just put into AI, if you put in the right kind of story, it might say you really need to go find medical attention, right? Or it might even signal. The next level would be signal for someone to come to your home. So I think it can definitely help with those sorts of things where healthcare is just a little bit more difficult to get access to, that help know when you need to go through the trouble.
I don't know if this is too deep, but we'll try it. I'm curious about two AI topics. From an engineering standpoint, nanobots in the bloodstream and organ production.
Well, they're both great questions. One of the questions, an article I just put out on social media, actually just on Twitter, was there is definitely an intersection of technology and AI, right? And then we'll see advances in technology. To me, that's what the nanobot kind of gets to. Just an article about something along those lines, a miniaturized camera that can take pictures of your blood real time as you're getting blood draw, and can detect changes in platelets, which are the little cells in your blood that form blood clots and scabs and things like that. That could be indicative of coronary artery disease or other problems, right? And you need both the technology to miniaturize and the AI to be able to process so many thousands and hundreds of thousands of images. And so I think we'll see that coming. There's an idea that we'll have nanobots, that it will be drugs that we actually introduced. That will take a long time, I think, because you're going to have to go through a lot with the FDA, and I think rightfully so, to prove that how those things work and that they're safe and all those sorts of things. So those things are coming. I think there's definitely going to be continued look at or examination of the use of these technologies in organ transplant. Because if you think about society as a whole, we're aging, right? Many of the countries I just visited, aging. And so at some point, they're going to be invested in keeping people alive longer because you need people to work, right? And so, and extending their longevity, not just their lifespan, right? Their useful longevity. So organ failure is a big part of that. And so there's just not enough of them. So I really think that in that instance, we have the artificial heart. I think that a lot of the innovations we'll see will be in almost like the bionic, the $6 million man kind of thing, where you probably have these kind of combination of mechanical and biological implants that can replace things. One actually that Mayo has been working on is a larynx. So it's an artificial larynx for patients after they have their larynx removed. They have to use the croaky wands. They actually can create a new larynx, but it's actually a fusion of technology and actually biomaterials.
Amazing. A 763 guy writes, AI is really good at pattern recognition. Does the knocker think it will revolutionize pathology?
Absolutely. I think one of the things that's a little scary, honestly. I'm not at this point in my career a little different, but it does have an amazing power to go out and look at patterns as the question raises, and also looking at different pieces of information and connecting them. It can look at so much, right? And so that is a lot of what a pathologist does, is either look through a microscope and look at a pattern on a slide and say, I've seen that before. I know this is cancer or not cancer, or go out and look at a bunch of different things in a patient's medical record and say, oh, here's how this all comes together. So the flip side of all that is, first of all, we are seeing a shortage of pathologists. So overall, it should make pathologists more efficient. And the general thought in healthcare is that AI won't replace doctors, but the doctors that use AI will replace those that don't. And I think pathology and pattern recognition is one of those areas. But there's real economic factors too that present headwinds. It's expensive to do that, and no one pays for it. So that's kind of the yin and the yang of it.
Speaking of money, another 763 guy wants me to ask the knocker how the massive federal cuts to medical research and anti-vax bias via RFK might impact or will impact cures/options for major diseases.
Well, there is a concern, I think, just that the U.S. should not cede its position as a leader in innovation in the world, right? And that certainly is something that both the EU and China, of course, and the Asia Pacific region, as well as India, would certainly are eager to be seen at least on the same footing as the United States in terms of innovation. So is there kind of a general concern around that? Yes. I think that overall, the sense is that things will stabilize and it won't be as dire as we fear. Mayo is very, we're in the fortunate position to be very, to be very well prepared for some of these things, others less so. But I think by and large, the reality is that we cannot see that kind of us as the leaders of innovation. And I remain confident that we're not going to cede that position.
This may be privileged. I don't know. 612 guy writes, my father has been a patient in Mayo for 2 years now. I spent a lot of time in the Gonda building. I heard rumors of a lung cancer treatment study. What has been noticed, and are Mayo labs seeing success? Is that something you would know of or could speak of? Or?
Actually, I can't speak. I'm not quite familiar with exactly. There's a lot. There's so much research going on at Mayo. So there's a lot, and certainly with lung cancer and pulmonary disease in general. So unfortunately, I can't speak to that one.
And I would, it's funny because occasionally we'll get a headline about a study that indicates major breakthrough in a particular area of cancer. And then you read the fine print and you say, well, this is the first of many. And it's probably going to take 5 to 10 years to actually figure out what we have here. And that's the hard part for people especially people who have folks in their families suffering from this kind of stuff, right? Is that the headline always, it's not misleading exactly, but it gets people's hopes up sometimes a little bit too soon on the basis of what the fine print reveals.
Yeah. I mean, and that's again, I get that. It's really oftentimes when some new therapy has promise out of a phase 2 trial, meaning that it gets ready to has to go through another level, phase 3 trial to be available at scale. So that takes a long time, right? So I totally get that. The flip side of the coin though is that we are discovering things so quickly. Kind of like we talked about with AI and drugs. There's therapies now that I just really would not even conceived of being available even 5 years ago. And particularly in the treatment of cancer, for instance, and the ways that we can target both the body's immune response to the cancer as well as specific abnormalities within the cancer itself. Again, there has to be a real tight interplay between what kind of therapies are we developing and how do we think about the diseases, and of course, pathology is part of that. So when you talk about cancer, we tend to talk about lung cancer and colon cancer and breast cancer and brain cancer and we think of it as an organ-specific disease. And it turns out some of these cancers are actually common between them. They have a common mechanism. And so all of a sudden you can say, well, and there are a few drugs out there to say, well, if you can prove that this cancer has become cancerous through this mechanism, you can now treat with this that we know is effective. So I think the more that we grow knowledge, we'll shorten that gap. The gap will always exist, but I think we can continue to shorten the gap between a promising observation, confirmation of that observation, and making it available to patients. 952
guy wants to know why certain medications, vaccines will not be given to people under a certain age and they are just left to suffer. For example, the example he uses is shingles.
Yeah. I don't know the specifics on the guidelines of shingles. They tend to focus on patients that are at greatest risk for shingles, which in this case is reactivation of chickenpox. Right, that tends to not occur in younger patients. It can occur in younger patients. It occurred to me when I was in my 40s, and it can have.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah,
wow.
Yeah, and luckily, again, I knew early on. I was able to get on the oral medication, which is like about the size of a horse pill. I mean, it's huge, but I was able to get on it because I knew exactly what was going on. That's a balance that will strike, and of course, there's people who would think differently about those things. Right now, I think the focus with vaccines will be trying to protect those at greatest risk. That's really the essence of the question. That tends to be how the recommendations come out.
Shingles, yeah, and because I've never gotten a shingles vaccine. I'm obviously of age that I could, and there's a lot of people, some people told me I'm an idiot because it is extremely painful condition. Is that right? Shingles can be?
It can be. So how does it work? Is the fact that after you get chickenpox, the virus doesn't go away. It becomes dormant in a certain part of your spinal column, actually. And so what happens is that it can reactivate. And in that one area that spinal column of your spinal cord, I should say, feeds, you'll see a reemergence of chickenpox. It can be very painful. And the real challenge with it is that it can actually have what's called post-herpetic neuralgia, meaning it could have the rash, it could go away, but the pain persists, and probably because it's been reactivated and somehow the nerve that it was in has been changed.
There's a big subject. Do you read The Atlantic very much? Atlantic.com?
My mom does.
Okay.
Yeah, I read The Athletic. to say,
close enough.
My downtime. It's an A word.
I was going to say, I mean, yeah, when you spend, because this is a story about medicine, and you got to get away occasionally, like you said, your brain would explode. Probably, I would assume, right? You got to get a little bit of an escape. And I'm going to get a couple more texts, and I want to get into this subject because it's a very broad, again, headline, but it's a story written by a guy named John Tierney, how public health discredited itself. To earn back the respect of Americans, the profession needs to return to its original principles. And the theory that is offered up here, and I'm sure you've heard of it, you've heard it before. In fact, maybe we've even discussed it before, that to a certain extent, medicine, in the minds of some people, is not enough about medicine as much as it should be, and too much about political issues and about equity issues. And that basically this, you can kind of pinpoint this back to George Floyd, and where there was this great reckoning around the country. Everything was reexamined. And quite frankly, a lot of things needed to be reexamined. But the question is, there's always that balancing act about, well, what's a fair approach to take? What is over the line where you allow politics to enter into too many of the medical decisions that should simply be, in the minds of this writer, about dealing with disease, dealing with afflictions, whatever the case may be. Do you have any thoughts about, you haven't read the story, so it's a little bit unfair to ask you to comment on it for that reason. Maybe it's something you can read and we can talk about the next time. But I'm sure it's a subject that comes up in your circles.
Oh, yeah.
Has over the years.
Well, and again, one of the other reason why I'm busy is I tend to be interested in everything, and I really have a hard time saying no. So, which is a problem. So one of my other responsibilities is that I'm the chair of the American Clinical Laboratory Association Board of Directors, meaning, I that's the lobbying group for clinical laboratories. And we have, especially during COVID, a lot of conversation with public health and interaction with public health
as well.
Right?
Yes, this came up.
So I do think it is an unfortunate byproduct of COVID was a politicization of public health decisions, right? And viewing those through a political lens. And two respects. Number one, they are political appointees, right? So then immediately there was also this great cynicism, right? That arose no matter what your perspectives were around those decisions. And then the other is, as you and I talked about, medicine is an art. It's not a science. So anyone you put into those positions is going to have their own kind of set of opinions about what's the most effective way to protect the public health, right? And I do think that there's been an erosion of trust in that, and that is really problematic. And we probably need some sorts of buffers in between the political process and the process of those organizations that are charged to protect the public health, because they have a huge job, right, and an important one.
We talked a lot. In fact, I got a text I intended to read earlier regarding the times when we were largely talking about COVID. And it was from let me see if I can find it here on the fly. This is from 612. Can you tell Big Knocker there are many of us that appreciated his COVID appearances? I managed a Metro hospital lab during that time, and many of us in our lab really appreciated his grounded and evidence-based discussions. And, I think, I don't want to try to unfairly summarize your approach on this, but I think you tried to be fairly grounded, and there were times even when you were questioning, all right, is this the right approach? Should we tailor our approach more, whatever the case may be? And part of, I think, what's covered in this story, which is it's not letting me sign on to, unfortunately, right now, is that there were, when it came to the decisions regarding, keeping people in their homes, et cetera, that there were some big name folks in medicine who were pushing against that, who are saying we're not convinced that the approach being used in America is as good as I think there were a couple of Scandinavian countries. And who's to say what was completely right or completely wrong, but that the sad politicization had to do with the fact that those doctors, it wasn't enough to disagree with them. In parts of the medical community, it was, we've got to shut them up. Mm-hmm. We've got to ostracize them. And we have to sort of put them in this little corner where no one could possibly pay attention to them, which I don't think ever works, as opposed to trying to debate and say, here's where I think what you're saying is wrong. Here's why we think our approach is better. And I think that's another example of what we're talking about here. Yeah.
Well, yeah. So I think on the one hand, great. I'm glad I was helpful to the individual. I think as a laboratory person, they can probably relate to this. My job, I'm going to give a diagnosis. If I go in for a biopsy or someone else, I'm going to look at all the information I have, and I'll make a decision. I'll put it on paper or in the electronic record that someone is going to make a life-altering change for you potentially, right? They might tell you need to have this part of your body removed, or you need to be on this drug, which will change your body, your life, right? And so personally, I just developed a system where I said I have to use the best data that I have. I have to draw the best conclusion that I can, and I have to be open to the fact that that conclusion might be wrong, as painful as that might be, but I have to be just equally assiduously careful about the information I use to change that decision. We didn't exercise that. We never articulated that to say we, as decision makers are using the best possible decisions. To your point, there are different ways. Hey, maybe Sweden has it right, but this is the approach we're taking in this country, and we'll continue to examine data when we know it's sufficient for us to reconsider. That would have helped a lot. And the problem, and you and I talked about a lot, is what happened then is that eroded trust, right? Because if you are aligned with someone that said, hey, maybe Sweden is right, and the approach is, well, Sweden's got it wrong. No, it's wrong. People are dying in the droves. No one knew. We couldn't leave our, so it's like you've now underwrote. Medicine and healthcare is essentially about trust, right? Even you think about, and that's what we eroded, and that's the problem.
Big, but that acknowledgement, and I think we're seeing more of it now. But I think once again it became, because we became so polarized politically, sharks and gents, as I call them, red and blue. That then, well, if the other side is saying this is the way to go, then I've got to be diametrically opposed to that on that basis alone. And I think even some people in medicine got caught up in that trap. Had less to do with the medical side of it than, well, I don't want to associate myself with that possibility because that means I'm giving sustenance to the enemy.
Yeah, and it's interesting I was thinking, it's bringing back a lot of experiences, and I think you and I talked about this maybe off air or on, but that was one of the things that would surprise me. It became not just about polarizing, but it became about discrediting, right? So if there's sometimes I would be say things on air, and then immediately it would or put something on X that I thought would be helpful, and then immediately it became about discrediting. Well, you don't understand that, you don't know that, those sorts of things, right? And that's also equally damaging.
All right, let's get a break in. Got one more segment. Got a few more texts to get into as well. It's our good friend, the Mayo Clinic Big Knocker, Bill Morice, kind enough to join us in studio today. 64686, Bradshaw and Bryant, KFAN text line. Give us a text.
Concert event of the year. Coming to Minneapolis, Paul McCartney live at US Bank Stadium Friday, October 17th. If you want to score a pair of tickets, head to KFAN.com, keyword contest now. Enter to win the Get Back Tour, one night, one legend. Don't miss out.
Is in with us for one more session today. Mayo Clinic Big Knocker, Bill Morice. What's the next? You got another big road trip coming, or you get to be around Minnesota for a while?
I'm around Minnesota for a while. Actually.
That's nice.
So I might have to go to Saudi Arabia. I was there last July. It was like almost coming to Minnesota in January. It was like you came to Saudi Arabia in the summer.
Isn't it a dry heat though?
A dry 140 is 140 still pretty
for 140. Yeah.
Yes.
Not for 140.
No, I don't. It was something. It was like
over 100.
It was like 120.
120.
And I went for a run, and I wore.
You did?
And I wore pants because I was afraid I was going to offend people, and yeah.
How was that?
They didn't have a fitness center at the hotel you were staying at?
A treadmill or something.
No, well, I like to get out in the sun. I like to see things and do things. So
man, oh man. All right, if you say so. Maybe you can answer this question. Dan, do you know how long you've been carrying around this illness? I met you in Galway, Ireland, and shook your hand, and now I'm wondering if I need to be concerned about an illness coming my way soon. That's Dave in Maple Grove. Well, I think you're okay, because, I wasn't sick while I was there. I came back with it 2 days later. Something started developing. So I would think that person would not have anything to fear from having shaken my hand in Galway. There were 2 or 3 people. It is weird when you're in a place, completely far away from here, and you're walking by some stores, and somebody says, "Hey, Dan Barrero." And you don't, and you look around, and it's just some rube, who happens to be visiting Ireland at the same time you are. But I don't think I would be. Chances are, I don't think I could have given him anything at that point. Correct?
I think you're in the clear.
It's
Yeah.
unlikely.
So I have had that Dan Barreiro experience by proxy. I think I told you one time I was waiting in line to get on my airplane in Amsterdam, and I was talking to somebody and telling them about this bike accident, and then the guy next to me said, "Hey, are you the big doctor?" So I was like, "Wow."
By the way, how are the teeth?
Teeth are good. I just got
Everything's
checked out.
good?
Yep, everything's good.
What a saga that's been.
Yeah.
But it's all's well. That's,
Yeah,
looks good. They feel good?
They feel good. My face is healed. I still have a little numbness. I'm a little bit part of my, there's no big deal.
Yeah.
It was a little funny too, because I was, the bike, I went to Italy, I didn't mention, and I bought a new bicycle, a Bianchi, which is the bike I crashed. It was the same brand. I thought, am I really tempting fate here when I was
pretty
riding
close.
Town? But you know what? I'm back in
But
the
you're
saddle.
back by, you're not, you've gotten past it, so there's nothing standing in your way. There's no mental, block regarding biking. You're back out there.
No. I mean, I'm probably just a little bit more, my IQ might have dropped a few points when I hit my head into something, and maybe that's why I keep doing it. But no, it's like your passion. I remember, growing up in Indianapolis where the car racing scene, this is extreme, but, and they would have the sprint car races, and there was a guy that had gotten trapped in a burning car and it had damaged his hands. And he had them, at that point, they didn't have the surgical techniques they have today. So they had him, he had them wrap his hands in a way that his hands could still fit on a steering wheel.
Oh my.
So it's like, I don't have that level of passion, but when it's your passion, it's your passion. So
you say you're not on X as much. You're on LinkedIn. I didn't even know LinkedIn is a big thing, huh?
Well,
What about Blueski? Are you on Blueski?
I have not done Blueski.
Oh, okay.
I have not done Blueski.
Right.
So, I don't. Actually, that's one of the things that has. Social media, I'm not quite as. I feel bad, but
Don't feel bad. It's probably healthier.
With email, but it's just like.
Is it healthier? Do you think? Because you never were anybody. I don't sense you got into a lot of X scraps. You tended to not engage that way. Is that fair to say most of the time?
It's fair to say, although, I mean, it was, I didn't look, what benefit would there be to try and, because you're just getting baited, right, to do that.
Yes, for sure.
And it's funny, I mentioned The Athletic, I read it, reading the comment sections on those pieces is also very intriguing. I'll leave it that way. But
yes.
So, it's not really, it's not to me a forum for debate. So, I just avoided engaging them, but people certainly would still come after, would try and get me to engage in that way. And
no question.
Not for me.
What about me? I couldn't find the text that came in much earlier, but I know it was related to measles. So I think some of our measles numbers are up. Are they up alarmingly? Are they up just a little? And then, because even one texter, as a 61-year-old, do I need to worry about measles? Should I actually get something like a booster?
Well, first of all, in terms of that question, you should just talk to your provider. That's the best. I can't know that specific individual.
Sure.
We did certainly see a rise in cases. My understanding of that has abated to some extent, although the total number is the most since 2019, and it does speak back to the whole question around public health, right? That measles is it's highly transmissible. It's a public health problem. There are younger patients that can have basically a life-ending sequelae called subacute sclerosing panencephalitis, but you can't stop. So it's not just measles, but it's a measles that could be fatal. So hopefully that, again, we just need to use the science and make informed choices on that stuff.
As someone that had COVID 3 times, I appreciated listening to the knocker, even when he was missing a tooth.
It was 3 teeth, by the way, just to be clear.
Was it that many?
It was.
I thought it was just like the top 2. No,
it was the front. It was his front 3.
Front 2
and then front 3.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So it's a pretty big bridge.
That's
in there,
massive.
too. Yeah.
My question is, looking back, would he have done anything different in his important position? I assume, does he mean regarding COVID? I'm not sure. He's not being very specific. We kind of covered that, but if you have anything else to add in that regard?
Gosh, no. I mean, it was such a time of hyperbole. Everything was hyperbole. So I don't know. I haven't self-examined greatly, but I can't. Nothing comes to mind that, boy, I wish I would have done that differently.
Where were we here? I work in older services, I work in older adult services. We're exploring using social determinants of health and genomics in reducing polypharmacy, enhancing resident lives, and sentinel events. What experiences have you experienced or seen in this area?
Well,
there's a lot of stuff there.
There's a lot of stuff there. I do think that one of the things that will continue to come to the fore in this whole idea of it really gets to how do we move our healthcare system out of a reactive one, meaning you come back from Galway, Ireland, and you don't feel well, and you go get your antibiotics, to a preventative one, proactive, meaning we're going to identify things early and we're going to avoid those. Drug interactions in older people is a big problem. They often have multiple drugs that can interact with your body in a way how you process those drugs and metabolize them. It's the area called pharmacogenomics, where you can do genetic testing to predict how your body will respond to drugs. I was actually glad that I had that, because I had to take a drug that it turns out I had to take more of it because of the way my body recognized it. It's still not widely adopted. And I think that's one of the things that hopefully we'll start to see is some of these tools that can help predict when you're at risk for something. And you can know that up front, and then you can stay away from it. That was one of the articles on my X feed was around hereditary pancreatitis, and that's a real serious condition, because if you have it and you get severe pancreatitis, you can die from it. So if you have people in your family, it's important to know, and hopefully we'll get better. I think that's kind of the essence of this question, at using those tools that can really help manage people in a way that they prevent having to need getting healthcare intervention, right?
Let's finish, believe it or not, with the sports question. And what's really remarkable about this question coming in is you and I were just talking about it off air. Here's the sports question that came in from 763 guy. Does the knocker have any ideas why all of these athletes are tearing their Achilles?
No, I think it's alarming to see this, right? And it's alarming. Just look at these last playoffs alone, right? You had Damian Lillard, and then Tyrese Halliburton, right? And it's, and also the guy from the Celtics,
correct,
right?
And Kyrie Irving late in the season.
Yeah. So I don't understand it completely. You can't say that it's, if it was just people like Damian Lillard, you could say, well, people are playing when they're older.
Yeah.
Right. But then you look at like Tatum and Halliburton, those are younger guys, right? You look at the running back now, I can't believe Cam Akers, who's done it twice, right? I don't know. It makes you wonder about the biomechanics, right? And we've gotten better with training, and muscles get stronger, but certain parts like that tendon is you can't exercise a tendon, right? So whether it's flexibility or whether it's, we've gotten to the point where our muscles can overpower tendons more than they could in the past, which is quite possible. Like you and I are talking about, it seems to me that someone should have a better technology to detect when someone's at risk, right? Because Halliburton had a strained calf. I don't know if that story was out there on Tatum. The thought on Achilles injuries, as I understand it, now an orthopedic surgeon might call in and know a lot more than me, is that there's oftentimes underlying inflammation that makes it prone, and that tendon doesn't get great blood flow. But you would think that because look, it's going to cost the Pacers millions and millions and a whole chance. They lost Miles Turner, and he was pretty clear that the Halliburton injury was part of that.
And he's out. They've already said for the whole season, right? The Pacers have already said he's not coming back at all this upcoming year or playoffs.
Yeah. So I don't know. I have to think that someone's going to look into it, right? Or even that you could have had, if you're at risk, you'd have some kind of better shoe or something that you look at. I don't know, but it is alarming, and I don't understand it, and I don't think it's just recency bias.
No, I'm with you. Yeah, I'm with you on that.
It's not something we saw a lot.
Were you a big Pacers guy growing up?
Kind of. Because
I remember, were they good when you were?
No, that was their
bad period.
That was their bad period.
Yeah,
I was there when they had to have the telethon. That's why I laughed.
That's right.
The telethon
we talked about
to actually
that.
keep
Yes.
the
as good as it gets.
business. Yeah, that was so.
Slick Leonard and his family. Yeah.
So, and I did go to games because one of my friends, his dad worked for a radio station that had tickets, so we would go and they were dirt cheap and there was hardly anyone there.
Already in the building.
But Indiana, much like Minnesota, there it was really college and high school ball, right? Much more than pro ball. So, but I paid attention, and they had the rifleman Chuck
Person,
so
who ended up here.
Yep, and then Reggie Miller. So they had some fun teams. I definitely got into the '90s Pacers with all that kind of action going on there. The Knicks rivalry, there was a 30 for 30 for that.
That's true.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure.
So there was some good fun.
This was a great run this year. Carlisle's a terrific coach. Person ended up here.
Oh, that's
and
right.
then after he left, I don't remember where he was after here. And I think I've told this story before. We had a writer, I don't remember if it was Zagoda. Somebody went to the visiting locker room for something. either it might have been after a game, before a game, I'm not sure which, and whoever that reporter was came back to me and said, Chuck Person has a message for you. And I said, what's that? He said, tell Barrero to kiss my ass. So that might tell you a little bit about what our relationship was like. Me and the Rifleman in Minnesota did not go all that well.
Play for the Spurs,
okay,
Hornets, and Sonics after us.
Yeah, so it could have been, who knows what the circumstances were. Yeah, him and Michael Williams. That was they were the two that came together, right? The point guard, Michael Williams.
Oh, that's right.
The guy who always used to spit right on the corner of the court, as that was one of his pregame rituals. Whatever, for whatever reason, I'm not exactly sure, and I don't know who got to clean that up. That'd be an unfortunate.
That was
position.
pre-COVID.
Yeah, that's true. Couldn't have gotten away with that.
This must have been back when they played at the Metrodome, because I did go to a couple of Timberwolves games at the Metrodome.
At the Dome, yeah.
Yeah, and that's when I was like a medical student. I had no money, so I'd sit in the upper deck. I mean, that was
couldn't see anything, but you were there at least.
I was there. I could. Yeah, the beers was as expensive as they are now. So I wouldn't even know, other than and then there is a proxy connection to Reggie Miller, because, of course, Pooh Richardson was his at UCLA after him. So, I guess there's a weird 6 degrees of separation.
All connection, for sure. Great surprise, man. I knew we were going to have you on, but even better to see you in person. So we'll stay in touch and hopefully see you at the State Fair. See if we can work that out, too.
Oh, hopefully
That's not that far off at this point.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah,
As guards, you remind me today.
Thank you for having me, and I'm glad I was able to join you in studio. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks, Knocker. We appreciate you. Top of the hour break. Come back, get into a couple of other items before we wrap things up at 6:30.
Mall of America's mystery cards are back, and we are bringing them to you all summer long. You can come grab yours at fan events throughout summer, wherever you see our KFAN street team. Then make sure to redeem them at Mall of America for fun prizes and big discounts. Full list of our events, KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
I got a couple items here for a quickie edition of news on the march. And perhaps the average rube will find this too inside baseball. Perhaps they will say, what do I care? I think that would be unfortunate, but that doesn't mean we're not going to talk about it. Number of journalists working in the United States has dropped by more than 75% since the start of the century. From 40 journalists for every 100,000 residents to just 8.2 journalists now. Now, again, there's folks out there who, hate the lamestream media. Say, good. I trust you guys. And I'm not here to get into that debate so much today. But what I am here to tell you is I think, especially in smaller locations, smaller venues, everybody loses. When whether it's newspapers, I know newspapers are archaic, but there are reporters who are covering things on a regular basis, professionally, on the ground, in communities of all sizes. We got a text, 2 days ago, I think, from our buddy Ryan Kath in Boston, saying that the kind of reporting he does, they find themselves in a position where they feel like they're talking to people who have no experience talking to reporters, because they don't talk to reporters anymore, because there's so many newspapers in smaller towns that no longer exist. And so wherever you are regarding, left, right, whatever the case may be, at its best, in many locations that aren't national, there can be a process of keeping elected officials honest, or at least asking them questions. And when there's less and less of that happening, I don't think anybody wins, no matter whether you are a shark or a jet. I don't think either side wins in that particular equation. Item number 2, news on the march. I don't know if you got into this with did you have Kessler on yesterday?
We did, yes.
Did you guys talk about the $430,000 bill that the governor?
No, I don't think that was out yet.
Okay.
I saw that this morning. The preparation for the Capitol Hill testimony?
That is correct.
Yep.
Governor Tim Walz rang up a bill of $430,000 for outside legal counsel to help him prepare for testimony before the U.S. House Oversight Committee last month. Now, that's not a typo. $430,000 for outside legal counsel to help prepare him for testimony before the U.S. House Oversight Committee. Governor called it ridiculous that he'd had to spend that money to prepare for what he calls a grandstanding event planned by Republican members of Congress. It's ridiculous. Walz said when asked about the legal bill during a break in a Minnesota Board of Pardons hearing on Wednesday. It's why we asked them to allow us to not be there. Certainly, I would tell you it's not where I wanted to spend money. It's not where I wanted to spend my time, and it certainly proved there was nothing there other than using it for grandstanding. He's not wrong, but that's become, with all due respect, Governor, the approach at the federal level, whether the Sharks or the Jets are involved. There is way too much grandstanding that takes place. But I will say again, that still misses the point. No one in their right mind can tell me that $430,500,000 is worthy of being spent to prepare anybody for anything on Capitol Hill or any place else. I mean, that's just that should get more than a surface passing mention. That's insulting. And there's a political wonk named Rich Neumeister who follows this stuff. He had a good tweet on this issue. I find it outlandish for any elected official, no matter what political stripe, to call the payment ridiculous, but then blame others. That money did not have to be spent. No, it did not have to be spent, and it shouldn't have been spent. And you're left with the old, why are we electing people? Now, we all understand you got a lot of time, a lot of responsibilities, and you have people who work with you and who help you handle things and help you prepare. $500,000?
It's crazy. What it tells me is we're in the wrong business.
Well, it's people always, it's too easy to get cynical about the political system. It really is sometimes, where it's just a cool thing to say. They're all crooks and can't trust any of them, and the money's out of control. But if you worry about that cliche becoming overwrought and overdrawn, then you got to look at this kind of story and say, well, this is what causes people to turn it into a cliche and to believe this kind of nonsense. There's no one in their right mind that tells me this is justifiable or makes any sense. The governor's office requested that the Legislative Advisory Commission, made up of a bipartisan group of lawmakers, transfer $430,000 from the general contingent account to pay for the specialized services. And then the memo explains why the services were needed. This was to the House Oversight Committee, June 12, 2025. Eyewitness News, this is a Channel 5 story, asked the governor if he understands why taxpayers might think the legal bill is excessive. Yes, and they should be angry at those folks. There's no reason we needed to be there. He's missing the point. That his question is a fair question to have, but he's dodging the original question. It still makes no sense. To me, if I'm the governor, I'm insulted that I'm not capable, people don't think I'm capable of being prepared enough or using my own direct resources enough to not have to ask for a check for $500,000. That's just, how do you take this sort of thing seriously if you are a citizen? Makes absolutely no sense to me. And again, the Republicans, Harry Niska's having fun with this. He's mocking it. But let me be clear about this. This money flows both ways. There's no question about that. And it all smells. It all stinks. But to me, I guess if the number would have been, maybe about $50,000? Okay, maybe. I mean, even that sounds kind of crazy. That's supposed to be some of the stuff you're prepared for. But $500,000 to appear, how longer did he even take testimony? And especially when you consider the people who were asking the questions didn't even give him a chance to answer. He didn't have to spend a dime. All he needed to do was show up and let them rant and then occasionally say, okay, I'll move on because you don't really want me to answer the question anyway. How's that cost $500,000?
It's an absurd number.
It's beyond absurd.
I'd love to see that itemized, broken down.
Well, I would assume, I wonder if it was.
Well, it has to be,
It's
right? If you
supposed to
send
be,
an
right?
invoice, there's got to be that. You can't just send a Capitol Hill training, $430,000. There's got to be, the hourly rate's got to be absurd. The overtime's got to be absurd. And like I said at the top, I'm going to tell my kids that whatever those people are doing to get to that position, that's what you need to focus on because that's a nice payday. Show Wrap is presented by American Pressure, commercial grade pressure washer since 1975.
It's the Bumper to Bumper Show Wrap.
Probably going to give Ben Gessling another week off here as we get ever closer to training camp. You reminded me, 2 weeks from today, we're at the Perch.
We'll be by ourselves on the Perch in Egan.
Unbelievable.
Hoping that we can get out of that sneaky back door.
We do expect Lavelle to join tomorrow at the usual time, 5:30. Who knows what else might be a part of the docket. I want to thank the big knocker, William Morice, Mayo Clinic big knocker, who joined us for a good solid hour beginning at 5 o'clock. And he ended up going the distance because he was here. He was in town getting some stuff done. So if you missed our conversation with him on a number of wide-ranging subjects, you can podcast between 5 and 6. Dr. Dan's inbox was a solid, I think, entrant today as well, between 4 and 4:30. We celebrated the Wolves' first victory in the NBA Summer League 2025. We got it done. We knocked off the Pelicans. And the story early was the big man, our number one pick, blocking, what'd you say, 5 shots in the first 8 minutes?
Exactly right. The first 2 shots of the game for the Pelicans were erased.
So there you have it.
Craigers is all in on him, by the way. I've been texting with Craigers.
Oh, is there? He's all excited?
Yeah. Why wouldn't he be?
Well, yeah, the probably more concerning stat was that the point guard had 6 assists and Dillingham and 7 turnovers.
Yep.
Probably going to have to lower that turnover number down if he wants to get in the good graces of the head coach.
Exactly, and Finchie is there, of course, watching.
So tomorrow maybe we play, because we had no top 5 at 5 today with the knocker in, we maybe play the annual Chris Webber, Meerkat, David Kahn. I was face-to-face with a Meerkat at a... I wouldn't call it a zoo in Ireland, but it was one of those animal farms where you get up close and personal with the animals.
Good luck.
And a number of very, very good-looking meerkats. They had a bunch of them. They had like 3 or 4 meerkats. They come right up to the window. They take
do.
a look at
well,
you.
they're omnipresent.
They are
the meerkat,
omnipresent.
That was the bit.
Very, very true, Davey. And I'll keep taking the steroids as well. Coming up tonight, it is Thursday, so it's Fan Outdoors night. Is that correct?
Right after us.
Right after us, so no top 5 at 5 as well. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and we will chat with you tomorrow beginning at 3.
Whenever you